Hello Wokingham voters, Kaz here. I'm standing as an independent parliamentary candidate for Wokingham and I'm here to tell you why I stopped voting Tory in 2010, even though I am actually Conservative. I believe in the free markets. I believe the free markets should be guide innovation through hope and opportunity. But our free market is no longer doing that. Any free market functions according to the rules of its market forces, and those market forces are to be set by government. And I'm here to explain to you how John Redwood changed your market forces to ones where your assets can be sold and stripped and your productivity stolen, and that he's been a central figure in making those rules pass, and he's been profiting from them. The government should be making you aware of them because he's been very brazen since the early 2000s. Rising star of the Rothschild's banking industry, John Redwood would be hard-pressed to be blamed for the first stage of this market forces change, the one where they allowed unlimited capital flows between one country and another. Prior to then, you would have to pay some form of taxation, you'd have to register who was sending money where. The banks were now custodians of the information that would let us know whether or not someone should be taxed or where they should be taxed. Any country can set up its own rules if you allow a foreign citizen to set up a bank account and take up ownership of assets through that bank account in another country. So we had very little choice but to change the rules and allow unlimited capital flows so that we wouldn't be the only country not doing so in Western Europe. We did have the choice that we could change the way that the information would be registered as you move flows. We didn't have to make it so that there was no registration of the movement of currency. The result of this was the rise of offshore tax havens. Switzerland, Cayman Islands, Malta, all these other places where you can own UK assets, charge rent, but never pay any tax on them. So then you ask yourself this: why should I pay tax on my possessions in the UK? The only reason your possessions have any value in the UK is the promise that people want to actually use them, are living around them, interfacing with them, maintaining the infrastructure, the laws that stop people who need them from just taking them. So it's wholly reasonable that somebody who's not paying any tax in the UK would pay some at least for holding on to those resources. That never happened. And the next thing that John Redwood did, which was very good for him and his mates but not good for you, was he undid the restriction that retail banks and commercial banks could not be the same. This was initiated originally with the Glass-Steagall Act or in the USA and similar things in the UK around about the 1930s. Great losses took out all of the capital in the base of a bank, and the bank didn't have the fractional reserves and they would have crashed. Well, they did crash. So now the Glass-Steagall Act was designed to allow banks to crash, the commercial banks, while protecting sensible banks that just had deposits which were lent out against mortgages. The kind of thing just doesn't fluctuate that fast. So that safety measure was put in place. John Redwood, in 1986, set up the 2008 crash. He was a fundamental part of it. And what that did was create an illusion of wealth, when in fact all that wealth is doing is stealing from future generations. If I have stocks and shares in a business running the exact same speed, and then I suddenly say, right, all of those stocks and shares have a certain amount of risk associated with them if it all goes wrong. Not anymore, because suddenly all the mortgages and all the deposits are backing that too. The risk is lower and the price of those shares go up. Suddenly bankers are allowed to make lots of money by lending out against the risk of your home and the risk of your deposits. Another thing you have to understand about banking is fractional reserves. Fractional reserves basically means that the bank only has to hold a fraction of what it is given. So I've got £100 and I want a back massage. I give you £100 to give me a back massage, and that £100 then goes in the bank. I want another back massage. So I go to the bank, but I can only borrow £90. So I borrow £90 from the bank, and I go to you, so I've only got £90. So actually that deflates. You go, well, I'll do it for £90 then. You took the £100, you gave me a little discount, I had one before. So there's £190 now in existence that the bank owes you. I've had two back massages. The bank owes you £190 and there is nothing to show for it. There's nothing backing it up other than the original £100. Now, if you decide to take out your £190, it doesn't exist. And the lower the fractional reserve, the greater the risk. And the more money is concentrated with a few people, the easier it is for them to make money out of exploiting that loophole. Because all they have to do is take their money out of a bank that has a very high fractional reserve and then move it into one that is maybe even 100% staying as capital. That removes that currency from the economy. So if you control £30 billion, you are removing £900 billion from the economy. And that can crash it. When you crash the economy, everything shrinks. The banks start trying to hold on to their cash. And the amount of currency moving the economy, or rather liquidity, gradually all settles with everything being worth less units of currency than they were before. Then the money boys buy back in. To commit this fraud, you have to be holding on to assets while the currency inflates and have someone to buy your assets at that top peak moment. One solution is to allow the public to take on more debt. You can do that by guaranteeing the deposit on someone who's going to take out a mortgage bigger than they can afford. Or allow those silly Eastern oil princes to buy your assets from you at that point, and then they lose out when it all goes wrong. Some people seem angry with the MP salary of around about £65,000, and some people think it's too low. But then you've got to decide how many days a week that MP is actually working for you. Or funding their London accommodation, where they spend most of their time at another office, representing wealthy individuals and helping them to avoid tax. I think you can split tax avoidance and tax evasion into three distinct categories. You've got your number one, your ISAs and your pension. That is tax avoidance. The whole purpose of those avoidance loopholes are to encourage the market to do something that's good for the market. So you encourage people to save for longer period times in a pension to look after their old age. That also provides a stable lump sum for banks to lend out against. You also encourage people to save into their ISAs. Again, those cash lump sums with limitations on how quickly you can access them allow banks to have a lump sum that they can hold more safely. Then you have tax evasion. These illegal activities are not good for the economy, and so we render them illegal. Then you have that other type of tax avoidance. Things that are legal, but certainly shouldn't be. Certainly not without any restrictions on capital movement, and having retail banks and commercial banks as one. In 2018, that will be undone. Let's never go back there again. Let's not forget who put us there and who's been making money out of putting there. And we need to start getting some of that currency back, because right now, your children will be paying 30 to 40% too much on just having somewhere to sleep. And that wealth won't be taxed. It will be going offshore to the Cayman Islands, to Seychelles, to Malta. And that private shelter tax is taking away from the currency floating around in the functional economy, which is the one we need to protect. So yes, I am a Tory, but I believe in the market at the bottom, not the market of the unproductive bankers.